Day 2. Today we're talking about drawing dinosaurs. And the people up here with me and to join us are some of the best known artists who frequently infuse their work with dinosaurs. So that's why we're talking about it. Somebody conceived the panel, asked if I'd moderate. I said sure, because it gave me a chance to actually meet the two on my left, whose work I've admired over the years. My far left, Eric Powell. He has done a tremendous number of work for publishers, but has gained a new level of appreciation for Devil Dinosaur at Marvel, right?
Yeah, that was a while ago. I did Devil Dinosaur with the Marvel Monsters. They did a line of Marvel Monsters, did all the covers for those books, but I also drew the whole issue of the Devil Dinosaur book, which was a lot of fun because it's a giant red Jack Kirby Tyrannosaurus Rex, which is awesome.
My immediate left is a writer-artist who has done any number of genres for publishers through the years, but is best known for, in this context, for the early work he did on a project he created called Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, published by Kitchen Sink, and now available in collections from Flesk, right?
That's correct.
Right. And currently writing the Prince Valiant strip, which is still running in papers if you ever see newspapers anymore. And to my immediate right is Frank Cho, who writes, he draws, his style is, his versatility as an artist is always amazing, and when he does the dinosaurs, you feel like, you know, you need to look over your shoulder just in case.
Yeah, I look at Mark's stuff.
So, let's start. What is the appeal? Why do we draw dinosaurs? What's the fun of it? Anybody?
They're dragons that actually we know existed, and there's a lot of leeway with what you can do with dinosaurs. We have fossil. We know they existed. We have fossil evidence, but we don't know what the soft tissue looked like. So any of us can do our own variation on hard evidence that we have, and legitimately like have a vision of what they actually were. You know, it's a lot of guesswork, and which gives you a lot of leeway to do creative things.
But well, I mean, as a kid, when you saw dinosaurs, I mean, did they captivate you in some unusual way, unlike animals at a zoo, or?
Well, they were the dragons that really existed, that
Right.
we know actually existed.
Yeah, because they're like larger than life. I mean, I got into dinosaur because of Ray Harryhausen, and so I saw, you know, the cavemen fighting the dinosaurs. You know, even though it's all bullshit. Is there a kid?
There's a kid, she's heard it, I think.
So I love dinosaurs because of Ray Harryhausen. I mean, then it was actually King Kong. It was actually, think about it, it's Willis O'Brien, King Kong. So you have King Kong fighting the T-Rex, you know, ripping his jaws and all that. When you're a kid, that's like freaking awesome. So that's where I got hooked on dinosaurs.
Eric, any?
Yeah, I can't tie it down like with a childhood fascination with dinosaurs. There's something I can't really say why it's so fascinating to kids.
I mean, well, there's certainly, you can't see them at the zoo, you can't have them as pets. You know, if you ever get to the Natural History Museum somewhere, I mean, you see the bones and they're just huge.
Yeah.
And I think it's that sense of scale.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, this is the right one.
Joining us now is a man who is so inspired by dinosaurs, his signature looks like one, Mr. Walter Simonson.
That's the closest I come to drawing one, really, is my signature. Oh, look at this, wow. I'll be right enough to share it, pal.
Sure.
Okay, all right.
So, Walter, people were just talking about, you know, what was it about dinosaurs that captivated you maybe as a youth?
Fantasia.
Fantasia.
Really?
My dad
Okay.
took me to see it when I was about 10 years old. You guys you know what Fantasia is? Let me go backwards. Does anyone here not know what Fantasia is? Oh, look at you guys, wow. So my dad took me to see it when I was about 10, and when the Rite of Spring by Stravinsky came on and the dinosaurs went marching across time, I went, how young are we as the audience? Well,
She's
I went
heard it.
bug crazy, is what I did. And I thought they were fabulous. And so from then on, I was like, Mr. Dinosaur. Here's my quick story, and then I'll be quiet for the rest of the panel. My quick story is that my dad came home once when after I'd seen the movie, and I was like 10. I was completely glum. And only the way only a child can be glum, sitting just looking like the world had caved in. And Dad said, "What's the problem?" And I said, "Well, I only have, I don't know, $1.25. I announced it 25 cents. I have $1.25 I've saved up, but I'll never get to $3." Dad said, "Well, what's the problem?" So I want to buy a book by Roy Chapman Andrews. And my dad, who was a scientist, not in geology, but a scientist, said, "Well, what book did the director of the American Museum of Natural History write that you're interested in?" And I said, "I wrote a book called All About Dinosaurs." It was a whole series of All About books when I was a kid. And he said, "Haven't I seen that book here in the house?" I said, "Yes, I get it out of the library at school, but you only renew it 2 times. You take it out once and renew it 2 times. I really want it. It's $3. I'm never going to make it." And Dad said, "Well, I'll tell you what. If you raise half the money for that book, I will pay for the other half." And I stood up, and it was like a quarter. I stood and said, "Do you really mean that, Dad?" Just, like really, like, yeah, my dad's lying to me. So, but you've got to know this is really it. And he said, yes. I went just screaming around the house, yelling. So I got the book a week later. And that was my dad's policy from then on for me, and then for my younger brother, was that if we wanted a book, and it was a book he vetted, it wasn't for every book, but the books he vetted, if it was a serious book, he would pay half. And that deal lasted up through high school. So it was great, it was fabulous. But I had that with probably my first real book on dinosaurs, and I kind of went from there and kept going. So that was my story.
Well, with the dinosaurs, I mean, once you got captivated by them, did you then study up on them, try and check them out in museums, see other monster movies, or read up on the scientific theories at the time? Or,
I read everything I could. Edwin Colbert had a book called, I think, Dinosaurs, maybe, that was actually a little more adult, a little more grown up than Andrews, which was really for kids. Although his didn't talk down to kids, it was really cool. So I bought every book I could find on dinosaurs at that time. My dad probably spent more money than he expected to on our deal. But
when we were kids, there was a lot less material on dinosaurs.
oh yeah, you could
So
have
you
every
really
book on dinosaurs.
had to search them out. too.
Yes, you did, but you could find every book on dinosaurs in print just about at that time.
When you guys were kids, dinosaur actually lived, right?
Well, they'd just gone over the hill, or they'd gone through that dust.
Time frames, right?
They'd gone through that dust storm, and Fantasia disappeared into the distance, so we were good. But I didn't see many movies. Didn't watch it on television. Our parents were a little strict on TV, so I think trying to watch a Godzilla film or some other.
Really?
Oh, we had rationing on television, so you could watch maybe 3 hours a week.
Really?
I think, and they work different systems. Kids figure out the systems and then game them. So you have to actually be like a couple steps ahead. When that game dies, you've got to have something else in mind. So at one point we had things where shows that we liked had a certain number of points, and we had X number of points to spend in a week, and you could blow all of it watching whatever we watched back then at the time. So they were cautious about how much TV we went on black and white televisions.
So it's kind of like Weight Watchers with the points.
That's what it was. It was exact. I think they probably swiped Dad's idea for that
Right,
company. That's what they did. But so I didn't see many movies about that stuff. I just saw but I did buy all the books I could possibly find. I think by 6th grade, I was giving a chalk talk lecture in my elementary school class about dinosaurs with
Really?
drawings of dinosaurs and their names spelled correctly below them. So I still know all the old names. I have not kept up. There are a billion new dinosaurs with names I can't possibly pronounce anymore. But when you're a kid, it's great to pronounce that and baffle adults. So I was just and from 3rd grade on, I wanted to be a vertebrate paleontologist and study dinosaurs, and that was really so I have the longest in your high school yearbook. When you're a senior, it says ambition. They have all the little kids. You have all your stats and the clubs you belong to and that stuff. And it says ambition. Vertebrate paleontologist. I had the longest name, I think, in the ambition of anybody in my class. And I went to college. I was a geology major, because usually you do geology or biology as an undergraduate and then do paleo as a graduate study. And I did actually a paleo project for my senior thesis. But as it happened, it was on mammals, because the college I was at didn't have a reptile collection. And I discovered after 2 semesters of looking at rabbit teeth and rodent teeth and deer bone fragments and stuff from the Oligocene, I wasn't that wild about doing that stuff at the time. Maybe if we'd had a reptile collection, I'm not saying I wouldn't have gone on in that direction, but at the end of my senior year, I could look around and go, yeah, this maybe isn't where I want to be going. So
I was actually wondering how you end up from studying dinosaurs to becoming
Being a cartoonist.
Comic book writer artist.
Well, I had 2 interests as a kid, dinosaurs and drawing. I drew from before I can remember. My mom told me that apparently I began drawing really young, and of course your mom, wow, my kid's talented, you're doing all this great. And then I kind of quit doing it. And she said, but she didn't force me, she said, no, it's too bad. And then when I was 4 years old, I had mono. And when you get mono, you're in, at least then, or maybe still now, you're in bed I was sick for like 6 weeks. So I was in bed a long time. And among other things, we had a little table that went in the bed, and Dad would bring back then typewriter paper or Velox paper home from the office. They would use it on one side and throw it out. So he would bring home reams of this stuff that had been used on one side, had kind of charts and crap printed on one side. And he had a special slot in his desk drawer at his desk, and that front slot was that kind of paper. And my brother and I were allowed, we could take that paper and do whatever we wanted with it, draw on it, make water balloons out of it, make little boats, whatever we wanted, fold it. And so I drew a lot. But then when I was 4, I began drawing again because I was in bed all the time. I never quit after that. But my dad was a scientist. He was a soil scientist, studied soils. And we had a traditional family. Mom was a homemaker, and my dad brought in the bucks and was a scientist. Traveled around the world. I think the Antarctic was the only place he didn't go. And so, they knew scientists. Everybody we knew either taught at the University of Maryland or was a government worker in one of the Department of Agriculture or something like that. And so the idea of being an artist or a freelancer of any kind, it just wasn't even on the radar. It wasn't like nobody thought about it. Nobody knew anything about it, including me. And so at the end of college, when I decided not to go on in science, really, I took a year off. This was right in the middle of Vietnam, which was a big thing for kids my age at the time. So I didn't make any long-range plans. I expected to be drafted, and that would kind of take care of my future for a while, one way or the other. It turned out I was drafted shortly after I graduated, and I flunked my physical, which was not the worst day of my life. And I have really, really bad eyes. And so even though I'm correctable to almost 20/20, I'm extremely nearsighted. I'm not the guy you want to give an automatic weapon to and put in the jungle with a bunch of other people. It's not going to end well. So I took a year off. I moved back home. I'm sure my parents were thrilled. I blew off my college education they'd paid for, and I moved back home. I'm sure they were just delighted by all that. They never let me see it. They were always nothing more. They were completely supportive. And finally, I said, well, I got to do something. I guess maybe I'll try art school. And so I applied to art school, and I got into Rhode Island School of Design. So I went to RISD. They took me as a transfer student, even though I was graduated, so I went in as a sophomore. And when I was in my first college, which is the mid-'60s, I discovered Marvel Comics.
Oh, so you actually read comics?
Journey into Mystery
at
120.
college.
Yes, there's a book called Emotional Intelligence by Dan Goldman, Dr. Dan Goldman. It was a famed bestseller 10 years ago or more. Well, Dan was in my class in college. I was in his room hanging out one day, and he would not remember this. And there was a copy of Journey into Mystery, I'm going to say around 112, 110. It was The Return of the Gray Gargoyle. I'd never seen Jack Kirby's work before, really. I'd never seen Marvel Comics. Ink by Chickstone. I read it, I went, wow, this is awesome. And of course it was Thor. I was a big Myth fan already. But then I didn't see any more. But at that time, Marvel had crappy distribution. So it wasn't until a year later I was in the drugstore near where my parents lived, not too far from here actually, down in Maryland, down in near DC, and I discovered a copy of Journey Mystery 120.
You grew up in College Park, right?
I grew up in College Park.
Yeah, grew up in Bellsville.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Outstanding.
Next town over.
That's right. We probably played you guys in football at the time. I never paid attention to the sports aspect, so I have no idea. But I discovered comics, so when I was in college, I became a Marvel fanatic. I read every book, I bought every book. Back then that was 12 cents a piece, and there were like 10 comics. So you could buy every Marvel comic and read everything. It was awesome. And then by the time I went to art school, I had kind of gotten tired of Marvel. I'd read everything they'd done pretty much up to that point. They were kind of repeating themselves. Galactus came back for the 3rd time and stuff like that. And I said, okay, I've read this. And I branched out. I read a lot of DCs. They went through a lot of that stuff. They were doing Enemy Ace and just a lot, stuff that didn't last long, but it was just fantastic. I loved it. And so I began reading more and more comics. So when I went to art school, I had become interested in comic books and maybe trying to produce them. So my senior degree project when I was at RISD was a comic book that I wrote and drew. And that became my portfolio, and I was able to get work. I'm sure my parents were just scared
Right.
a lot. But
This was when, like, early 70s?
yeah, I graduated from college originally in '68. Then I took a year off, went back to school as a sophomore, graduated again in '72. So I have 2 bachelor's degrees. And in '72, I got out in May. I had a summer job, and then I came to New York in August, right around August 1st in '72, to try to get work, and it worked out okay. I lucked out.
How's it going for you so far?
Carmine was the guy that loved my stuff and gave me work. And so far, I keep hoping I'll never have to get a real job. That's worked out
So
all right.
was your parents disappointed when you became a comic book writer?
I think they were thrilled I was making a living. I'm sure they were. I mean, when I called my parents at the end of my college career, a month before graduation, and said, I'm not going to grad school, my dad was great, we talked, but I gotta tell you, I didn't think about this until years later, because when you're that young, you're it. And years later I went, well, I can't imagine a conversation my parents must have had after my dad hung up the phone. I wonder how that went.
Right.
So, but I never saw that side. They were always supportive. And I think, even though I don't think Dad had any idea what I did exactly, he had no interest in reading comics, but I think he was proud that I, found something I liked to do, and I made a living at it, and I was pretty good at it, and I think he was delighted. And so was my mom. So it worked out okay.
Now, Mark, in your case, that first work was the catalog of dinosaurs. What was your path to drawing dinosaurs professionally?
Yeah, like Eric said, it's hard to separate anything where the interest came from, but I do remember, it came out through kind of what Walt was saying. I do remember when I was about 5 or 6 years old, several things happened all at once. The movie Gorgo.
I saw that. I did see that.
Which I didn't know. My parents wouldn't take me to see it, but the ads in the paper and on TV were, looked really good at the time. The big guy in a rubber suit, but it looked really good on TV. And then about the same time, we had a little, this is 1960 or something, we had a little black and white Philco TV, which you had to strain to see anyway, and they showed King Kong. And I saw King Kong for the first time, and I think all of us have been so influenced by that film. But there was a lot of mystery in the fact that I could barely see what was happening on the screen. There was a lot of shadows, and it was like, what the hell is going on? I want to know more about this. And then I started seeing comics on stamps about that time with dinosaurs, and it all added up to the earliest drawing I can remember ever doing was a watercolor of a brontosaurus on the kitchen table. But anyway, it was a lifelong thing that developed when I got to the point where I decided I wanted to try my hand at comics. It was just a natural thing to do, You take what you're passionate about and you put it into your work, and dinosaurs are a good, I guess, getting that earlier, they're the living dragons. They are part of the, the collective unconscious of the world or something, huge reptilian beasts, and they were.
So you were a security guard before you broke into comics.
I was a security guard and doing advertising locally, and really frustrated with all that.
Right, and then while you're working, is that when you started writing and drawing Cadillacs and Dinosaurs?
Yeah.
Xenozoic Tales?
I spent about 4 years developing the concept because I had other work, and I didn't have any contact with the comic book industry. I was kind of scared to death to give it a try. So I spent 4 years developing this concept, which allowed me to take a rough idea and kind of refine it to something that I knew, I'd be able to stay with. It would have longevity, in my mind, in my interest. So yeah, and I was working security while I was developing all this.
Turned out okay.
Yeah, it worked
It's
out.
got very well received.
I hit the comic book industry in the black and white boom, and believe it or not, for any of you who are young artists interested in getting going, this was a time when they needed more comic artists. They needed people who wanted to draw comics. There was a boom in the industry, and I was able to literally mail my stuff in to the U.S. Post Office and get replies from 7 major comic book companies by mail. That system doesn't exist anymore. But it was a different time. It was the mid-'80s. It was a very different time.
And Eric, you got in a little after all that. I mean, let's talk about your path to drawing dinosaurs and monsters and things that go bump in the night.
Godzilla was my entry point. And I don't think as a kid I differentiated monsters and dinosaurs. They
Sure.
were all kind of the same thing. They were saying they were the living embodiment of dragons. And Sunday afternoon they always used to play the who's the actor, the old Tarzan?
Parker?
Swimmer.
Oh,
Yeah.
Weissmuller, yes.
They used to play his Tarzan reels, and then they would play Godzilla movies. It was one or the other on Sunday afternoons. And so I got obsessed with Godzilla, and that kind of started a fascination with
That's
that
an
stuff.
interesting combination.
Yeah. Yeah, it was Tennessee. It's weird.
Well, in Pittsburgh, they would show on Saturday mornings the old Weissmuller movies
Mhm.
with some jungle serials like Jungle Girl,
Mhm.
Francis Gifford, which was the first time I really appreciated girls. And then they throw in old like movies like Kong too.
Yeah, they would play a bunch of 50s, monster movies and stuff, and Godzilla movies, and black and white Tarzan
Yeah.
films.
I mean,
Kind of weird.
to put this into perspective
Yeah.
for everybody, basically, the eras we're talking about, late 50s through the 1960s, there weren't a lot of channels in any of the areas. You had the three major networks and maybe one or two independent stations. PBS didn't quite exist yet. And they would buy these packages of movies and serials and whatever they can get to air when, they had to fill hours. And on the weekends, it was a lot of these movies because either it was for the adults who wanted to see what they saw as a kid, or the kids who had nothing better to do because we weren't good at Little League and we would watch the monster movies.
And there wasn't a lot of material on TV at the time. They were
Yeah.
looking, they were dragging up old stuff.
And, TV stations used to go off the air at night.
Yeah.
They'd be on until 1 in the morning or something like that. And it'd be a test pattern.
I haven't even thought about that tone in a long
Oh,
time. There was a death. I was like, no.
That was it. Because and somewhere in the 50s, like Universal sold packaged all their old monster movies, Frankenstein's and.
That's where we rediscovered them all.
And put it in, I think, where we were, it was called Shock Theater, and it ran
Yes.
at like 1 in the morning on Saturday. And this is not about them, but I'd never seen Frankenstein. I'd heard about the Frankenstein movie. I'd never seen it. I was dying to see it. And one night, Shock Theater, Sunday morning, 1 a.m., Frankenstein. And my parents, I was in high school, and my parents said, okay, you can watch it, but you have to go to bed at your normal time and then wake up and go work. So I went to bed at 10, had my alarm set, I woke up, I staggered downstairs. I did stagger downstairs. I flipped it on. I missed like the credits. I missed the first 2 minutes. I missed the credits. So I see a couple of grave robbers, and they break into a mausoleum. And then they start to open the coffin, and suddenly whoever's in the coffin comes out and starts killing one of them. And then the other guy is trying to climb out the window, and he starts getting killed. I don't know how it all worked. And I just remember thinking, boy, this is really different than the book. And then it kept on going. And eventually it went, it was so different. And it was so weird. And the Frankenstein monster wasn't around. And finally it went to a commercial, and it came back. We're not going to do with Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. I went, oh no. I mean, it was okay, but it was just not, I was waiting to see that classic Frankenstein movie. I was so upset. But that's also how TV Guide was back in those days. Stuff was a little more approximate.
Those are the days, right, if something was on at 3 o'clock in the morning, that was your chance to see it.
Oh, yeah.
There was no recorders, there was no.
That's right.
That was it. If you didn't see it, it may not ever be on again.
And you had no idea, no inkling, you'd be able to get all this stuff, either on DVD, Blu-ray, streaming.
No, there was nothing of the sort. I mean, we
Oh.
were lucky if the local library showed 16mm movies every now and then.
Well, it's like buying a
For
comic book.
Halloween.
You bought your comic book that month. You didn't buy that issue of Walt Disney Comics and Stories with Carl Barks in it. You didn't see it again. It was gone next month, and that was the end of it.
So back to dinosaurs.
Okay.
We're dinosaurs.
Either today or growing up, was there one dinosaur species that fascinated you above all else?
I always like the T-Rex.
That's kind of the atypical one, it's like so fascinating. It's just a giant head with teeth, it's just frightening.
And the little
Yeah.
Well, the thing that fascinated I mean, like, I grew up with the Ray Harryhausen and stuff,
Right.
and Ray Harryhausen dinosaurs were pretty much like Charles Knight dinosaur with the tail dragging on the ground. And then Jurassic Park came out back in, what, 92?
2 or 3.
Yeah.
Something like that. And then that actually changed my my idea of a dinosaur, because suddenly it became more horizontal and more bird-like.
More aggressive looking.
At
Yeah.
what point did science change its opinion that
Yeah.
the tail didn't drag the ground? When did they, because I remember like that, it seemed like Jurassic Park
70s.
was the first, like,
The
popular
scientific
culture.
Well, there
thing.
weren't a lot of dinosaur movies throughout the 70s and 80s, so
I know.
science was catching up.
Was there something before Jurassic Park that had them doing the proper?
Well, they began, I don't know about tipping them horizontally. I think John Ostrom was a professor at Yale who did the Deinonychus work. And that was the beginning of the idea that dinosaurs weren't these slow, sluggish lizards that kind of crawled around, and somehow, I'm not quite sure they got food, but they somehow did it.
Right.
But that would have been, I mean, that's like 70 or 71. By the mid-70s, I think Bob Barker had written the book, Hot-Blooded Dinosaurs, which is not really quite hot-blooded, but he was a good salesman. And he had good promotionals. So the idea that they were faster and that other stuff was going on was coming in from, I would say, 70 and then more the mid-70s and on after that. I don't know when they tipped the T-Rex over. I know the American Museum of Natural History, which I visited as a kid, had a T-Rex skeleton, still does, but had a T-Rex skeleton back then. And really, I mean, it was funny because when I saw it as a kid, it's standing upright. This is the way they used to draw, it was like a man. It stood upright like that, the tail, spine went right like this, the tail went right out down the thing. They eventually remounted it, which was a tough in itself because it's all this iron work to try and get, those are the real bones. So they weigh like a gazillion pounds. And there aren't any blacksmiths around anymore. They're farriers or furriers, guys who are horseshoeing, farriers. But they found some blacksmith in Canada, some young guy that learned from an old guy, I think in eastern Canada, who knew iron work. And so I got him and he directed it. And they remounted the T-Rex the way you see it now. And what's interesting is, in some ways it's scarier, and in some ways it's not quite so impressive. It's scary to me anyway. It's scary because the head's like right here.
Right.
And the head's like, gigantic, and so you're going, oh yeah, I could easily be mouthful. Like before it's so high, you're thinking, maybe they'll not see me. And now you're screwed. But I will say the fact when it was 20 feet tall, it's much lower now. When it was 25 feet tall, that was pretty impressive. That was scary. So
The American Museum has been in the forefront, though, of pushing the idea, which is pretty much brought across the board accepted now, that birds are dinosaurs.
yes.
And that's what my favorite dinosaur, now I tell people, is blue jays. I love blue jays. And they're living dinosaurs, and you look at these things, and I'm hoping anyway that I can look at these and you can extrapolate what dinosaur behavior was. You look at a flock of turkeys, wild turkeys, man, and they move and they act like
Oh, no kidding.
dinosaurs.
We
They're
have where we
dinosaurs.
live. They really do. You can just see dinosaurs walking across the yard. Those guys move.
Figure all these, whether they're predatory birds or herbivorous birds, they're probably following patterns that go back to the dinosaurs to a certain extent.
Yeah, because like
Go ahead.
I was in Australia several weeks back, and then there was this big giant, it's not an emu, but what was it called? Cassowary, yeah. And it had, that thing stood about 5 feet tall, and it just came right up to me and has that stare. And you're looking at his feet, and it's a T-Rex feet. And and that thing is just like staring at you, like sizing you up.
Wow.
And if that cage wasn't between us, I think it would come after you. And then actually, those things will attack people, I heard. And with the claws, basically rip your.
They disembowel.
Yeah, exactly. And it was like pretty creepy. It was only 5 feet tall and just like staring at you. And it's like
Well,
walk as you're walking,
That's
you
about
know.
a foot taller than you then?
Yeah, exactly. It was. I was looking it up. So, and, yeah.
Well, in researching to prepare for the panel, I came across an anecdote that You apparently preceded the scientists in FF 345, where you did feathers on your Velociraptor before the scientists came out and said dinosaurs probably had feathers in
Yeah,
this
I
is
called them, I think it was
2007.
a Deinonychus, I think I used in the,
Okay.
but I did. I didn't really just invent that. I didn't say,
No, but
wow, they're
I'm-
birds, I'll just put feather. I got it from somewhere. I
Okay.
couldn't tell you where I got it from now, but I was kind of keeping up on some of that stuff. I thought, what the heck? And so I didn't feather him fully, but I did give him some crest feathers and stuff. I'm sure I had seen restorations of them by that time that kind of looked like that. It was still kind of early days for that.
Yeah.
But it was pretty early. And it was funny because I haven't drawn that many dinosaurs in comics. I mean, people think of me and think of dinosaurs. Probably my signature helps with that. But I hadn't drawn that many dinosaurs. Nothing like you guys really. And I added a few here and there. I did something in the Fantastic Four, which might have been about the first time
Right.
I really did a dinosaur story in the comic. There might be some earlier, but there's not a lot. I haven't done a lot of dinosaurs. But I have that label, which
Yeah.
is fine. I'm happy to have it.
That's why you're here.